Hey there, welcome back. Last video you saw me make a stone setting inside of a beach rock, turn that into a pendant, and today I'm going to do the same thing. In the other video we talked about there being two different ways to do that. So the first way being the tube setting and then having it riveted into the stone and then setting the stone into the riveted piece of silver. This one we're going to take some turquoise, little turquoise nugget. I'm not sure which variety of turquoise this is, but I'm going to drill the top to glue in a bail, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the front. I'll create my stone setting and then end up gluing the sapphire in the stone setting into the piece of turquoise to create a pendant. That's the other way to do it. Jeweler's epoxy is used relatively common in pearl earrings, a lot of drilled drops, that kind of thing. So epoxy is not something that it's unusual to see in some types of jewelry. So what we're going to end up doing is creating these little rivets, and I'm going to show you how to make these. And they are going to be accepting that stone setting. On the top of it, I use the engraving tool to texture the top. And then what I'll end up doing is the same thing, creating the seat, setting the stone, and then taking this whole thing and setting it into the piece of turquoise. The big difference with this project is that before we drilled the stone, and then put the setting in, and then set the stone, I'm gonna do everything on these guys first, create the little rivet setting thing, and then after we get that fitted in, we're gonna fit that to the stone. So follow along. We're going to do some soldering, we're going to do some metal forming, some texturing, and some stone setting. If you haven't already and you like these kind of videos, go down to the bottom there, hit like, hit subscribe, leave me a comment on the video, tell me what you think, tell me what kind of video you'd like to see in the future. I am going to be having some different varieties of things, some rock hounding, some jewelry, some general everyday this and that, so feel free to leave me a comment, and I appreciate you watching. So the first thing we're going to do with this project is to make a jump ring. What we're going to want to do is select the jump ring that has an inner diameter that is just slightly smaller than the tube that we're going to be using for the stone. I'm going to use the same kind of Montana Sapphire as I used before. They're going to be about the 2.8 to 3 millimeter diameter, and the tube that I've picked for this to fit that is the 3.56 millimeter overall outside diameter tube, with inside diameter is going to be less than the overall diameter of the stone, which is 2.8 or 3, right around there. And the internal dimension of this tube is 2.35. That gives us enough space on the outside of that tube when we drill our seat that we can push that metal over or burnish it over, depending on what type of stone setting we're going to do. Do stay tuned, because I am going to be doing some tube setting and some flush setting demonstrations talking about this technique, and there'll be some other fun stuff coming too. Okay, so you've seen all the jump ring tools where you can wrap things around a mandrel with a drill, show all that. A lot of those sets don't come with near enough diameters for jump rings. So my recommendation is to grab one of these sets of center punches. These are used in machining and manufacturing to insert into a hole and then tap on the end. There's a little sharp point there. That sharp point leaves the center of the hole, but they come in a really fantastic set of these guys, and they're great for making different size jump rings. So if you remember what we had talked about before, the outside diameter of the tube is about 3.5. The mandrel that I've chosen is 3.4. There's going to be some spring back when I round the wire around this mandrel, so if I need to, I can take a little burr and drill the center, and I'll probably end up doing that. So we're going to make some jump rings real fast, and like I said, these ones are going to be around the 3.46 mandrel, and that should give us the perfect diameter for that tube to fit into. Okay, for the jump rings, I'm going to be using 14 gauge wire. I'm going to anneal this first because it is pretty springy. I want it to be nice and soft so I can make nice tight jump rings. So I'm going to go ahead and anneal that real quick, and I'm going to bring you along. Okay, fun trick with annealing. I'm going to show you how the color of the flame changes as you get up to annealing temperature. So we're going to heat this up, and you're going to see the color of the flame change and get fluffy. It's getting brighter and more fluffy now. And up and down. You'll see the flame get brighter. Right there. Right there. Brighter. And we should be annealed. So I'm going to quench this and then we can start making our jump rings. We've got our drill. We've got our mandrel we selected. I'm going to insert the mandrel into the drill. And then I'm going to take the wire and I'll insert it into part of the chuck here. And that's going to help keep that wire in place since this particular mandrel doesn't have a hole in it. And it's a little too small for that. I'm going to start winding the wire around the mandrel, just a couple loops at first so it stays there when I get going. And then I'm going to, what I can do is take a piece of leather and hold it, or I can take a pair of pliers, or I can just use my fingers. In this case, I'm just going to use my fingers, go nice and slow. And I'm going to wrap this around the mandrel, and then we'll finish this up. If you have a little tail there, you can grab a parallel jaw plier, grab the end of the wire, and just help coax it around. That way you get more jump rings out of your wire. So now we have all of our jump rings on the mandrel and we're good to go. So we'll take this out and then we'll saw some jump rings. Okay, to saw the jump rings, we're going to use one of Line Punch Forge tools. It's a bench chuck. It goes on to a GRS bench pin system, just like that. It holds a split mandrel. So the split mandrel has a cut right in the center. The jump rings will go onto the split ring, and then the saw blade can go right down the center of the mandrel and cut them. The thing we want to do is lubricate our jump rings for cutting. I'm going to use Burs and Blade Balm. This is one that I have made by a friend of mine who does beauty products. It is on the website. It's all natural, and so you don't have to worry about getting chemicals on your fingers and stuff with your lubrication. So we'll put him on there. We're going to put a little bit of lubrication on our saw blade. Same thing. This is the Sphinx saw frame. Cool handle. And we'll go ahead and start sawing. Little tiny slow cuts to get going, and then using your entire saw blade. And that last one will be a little tricky. We'll get him. Okay, the next step is to close our jump rings. So we'll take some bent nose pliers and some chain nose pliers and just wiggle these so they're nice and closed. I'm going to hold this up to the light to see if I can see any light through the jump ring. This one is nice and clean, no light through. Do another one. I'm going to probably close up 3 or 4 of these and then stick the rest of them in my surplus jump ring supply just in case I need them in the future. Since I like this technique, I can see myself doing it more. So what you can do if that's the case is just create a surplus of components so that you can go and work in kind of a production fashion. And then what we're going to do is solder these together. I've already tested them pretty much with the tube. You can see here, these go on nice and easy. when I flatten these out slightly and dome them, that hole's gonna get smaller. So I'm gonna need to take a burr and burr it out. Just right now, this is perfect. They go on. They're not quite soldered yet. So once they're on, we'll dome them, we'll dap them, and flatten them out a little bit. Okay, so before soldering these, I did pickle them. And I'm gonna set my solder just underneath the joint of the jump ring so that when I heat from the top, the solder follows the heat and goes up into the jump ring. Another way of doing this is to stick the solder inside of the joint. That works well too. I'm just going to lay the solder down and put the jump ring right on top of it. I am using hard solder. I'll be using hard solder this entire time on the next soldering operation as well. There we go. Now I'm going to take my torch and I'm going to move it in a circular direction around that jump ring so that they all evenly heat up, and you'll see that solder flow. Just making sure it's flowed the way that I wanted it to. Because we are going to be doming and dapping these, and flattening them out, so I want to make sure my joint stays nice and tight. So they look good, and we will go ahead and pickle them again. Okay, the first thing we're going to want to do is flatten these out. We can either do that on a flat anvil, or we can start it off with a large dapping block. I know not everyone has one this large. So for me, I'm just going to use it that large because eventually I'm going to dome it anyway. So I'm going to throw him in here, and then I'm going to slap it. I'm going to do 3 of them. I'll show you a little close up here in a minute, and then just give it a slap. Give it 2 times just for good cause. And then when I pull it out, I have a flat washer. And one more. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is we'll inspect our washers to make sure we didn't break any solder joints. Nope. All right, and they already have a little slight dome to them, so I'm just gonna accentuate that by picking a little piece in the block there. I have my dapping punch, and then I'm gonna grab my hammer again, and we're gonna dap this. Usually about 2, and we're gonna create this dome shape. That dome shape, we could go a little bit more aggressive. I'm gonna try maybe 1 a little bit more aggressive and see what it looks like. When you're picking the dapping punch for the hole, make sure the dapping punch will fit into the hole and not hit the sides. It's a good way to create a ring around your dapping punch, and yeah, no, you don't want that. So we'll make this a little bit more aggressive, just for 1, see what it looks like. You may like it, you may not like it, but I'll do 1 that way, and then I'll go back to the other holes for the other, because I have done it this way before. Same thing, washer in there, dapping punch right in the center, give it a smack, 1 or 2. Anytime we drill a hole and then we form it, we're going to change the dimension of that hole because metal is either stretching or it's shrinking. And remember, these jump rings fit around the tube just perfectly. They do not now. They do look pretty, and they have that nice kind of dome shape to them that we want, but they don't fit. So what we're going to end up doing here is finding a ball burr or a cylindrical burr that fits the same diameter as the tube. So 3.5, 3.52, right around in there. That ball burr is going to be used to open up the hole. And here comes a little dilemma. You can try holding this in a pair of parallel jaw pliers and drill it using the ball burr. Sometimes that's really hard, and this likes to fly and you have all sorts of not so fun stuff happen. Or you can take this and you can set it in some shellac, you can set it in some Thermalock, or even something like Renee Ford's Set It. That'll allow you to put these down nice and flat, let it go, and then bring your ball burr. And I think we're going to do that this time. We're going to use Renee Ford's Set It. So I have my Set It. Comes in pellet form. I have another video on how to turn it into this form. But I'll put this in my vise, cinch it down, I'll flatten this out. It's clear when it's workable, and then it turns white when it's ready to be used. So I'm going to find my pieces here. Just to make sure we have all of these set in there nice, I'm going to take a heat gun and put my heat gun over the top of that to kind of melt everything in place. And then once it cools, it'll be white, just like it's starting to show here. And then I can use my burr in my flex shaft to drill those out a little bit larger. That's going to be much safer for your fingers. I don't know how many times I've got a burr to the finger or a saw blade or something like that. So using a product like Set It or any of the other thermoplastics they have out there, Set It's just one that my product team member Renee Ford manufactures, and I sell for her. And so it's perfect place to use this type of thing because it keeps you nice and safe and allows you to make nice accurate holes. Okay, this should be dry enough for me to do. I have my 3.5 millimeter burr here. So if during your test fit of your ring and your tube, it's not quite as tight as you want, what you can do is take it back to the dapping block and hit it with a little smaller dap, and it should tighten that hole up a little bit. So the total height of my washer is about 1.5 millimeters. I'd like to try and double that for the length of my tube. So 3 millimeters ish. I'm gonna go a little above that. So I'm gonna do like 3.2, 3.5. Lock those down so that I can use these jaws to mark my tube. One of the important things to do before you cut your tube is you want to make sure your ends are square. So I'm going to take file, we'll mark it and cut it. Next thing to do is to get these guys soldered up. So I'm going to place these tubes and rings so that the rings are facing dome down. They're dome up. The top of the dome is facing down. And I'm going to place these tubes right in the center. I want to make sure that they fit nice and tight. Just like that. I'm going to push the dome down to make sure the tube is all the way in. Sometimes it helps to grab these with tweezers when I'm on camera, just so you guys can see. Because the edge of the tube has been flared out a little bit from sawing, it might be a little harder to push these down in, which is cool because that makes for a little nicer solder joint. And then we're going to add some flux and some solder. Just right on the edge there. I want it to flow down to the washer. I don't really want it to flow up on the tube. I'm going to heat around the outside of it like I was soldering my jump ring. So that way the washer heats up first, and the tube heats up second. I want that solder to flow right down in between the intersection of the tube and the washer. Flux is going to bubble, so I'm going to try and dry it out a little bit. I don't want the solder jumping out of place. Solder flowed. Solder flow. A little bit more. That's better. I see that flash around the outside when the solder flows. Just like that. That one I don't like. The washer popped up a little bit. This is why I make extras when I do something like this. Let me show you what happened. That one got a little hot and melted and popped up around the edge. I bet I can fix that, but I really don't want to because I have 2 extras there. So I'm just going to worry about those 2 extras, and this guy I'll fix later. I'm not going to waste my time doing that on camera. What I'll probably end up doing is just take one of those extra washers that I have, unsolder that tube, resolder a new one on, and then call this washer just scrap. I can melt it down and make balls. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pickle these, and we're going to texture the top before we start our stone. So we have a couple of these little rivets made, and I'm going to texture them. And I'm going to use my Graver Mach AT from GRS with a little round over tip here I made to create a little hammer texture on top of that. I'm just going to do it under the microscope here. I'll set up the camera so you can see what's happening, but I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking. I'm going to put this in a ring vise holder so I can hold it with my hand, and then my GRS does a little hammering action and allows me to get a nice texture on it. After we get the texture, we'll go ahead and set the stone, and then we can drill the proper size hole in the piece of turquoise. As you can see, I've got the little rivet here set in the set it. Used a heat gun to heat it up just slightly to be able to press it in there. Remember, when we're setting our stone, we're going to measure the stone and we're going to pick a burr, a setting burr that is just about exactly what we need. So if it's a 3.8 stone, we're going to look for a 3.8, or excuse me, a 2.8 stone, we're going to look for about 2.8, maybe 3 millimeters. And we're going to use that setting burr to set that stone in there. So we'll measure our stone. I'll show you what it looks like, and then we'll select the right burr. Okay, so I selected this guy. It's got a little bit of a blue tone to it. Should look nice with the turquoise. Zero them out, and then we'll place the stone on its top, its table, and measure. This one is about 3.2 millimeters. So we'll select a setting burr that's about 3.2 millimeters. So this one is about 2.9. We want a 3.2. We got a little bit of wiggle room there to be able to make that work. So that should be fine. We'll use this guy. Okay, stone's in there. I'm gonna start doing the burnishing. I use the micro burnisher. I'm just gonna go around the edge of the metal, slowly push a rim around the stone. Once I get down at this angle, I'm gonna go a little taller. I'm not touching the stone, I'm pushing the burnisher against the metal. And that stone should be set now. You look into the microscope to make sure. Use the burnisher to kind of clean up the edge a little bit, kind of blend it into the texture that we made. And we're ready to take it out of the thermoplastic and drill a hole. Like you guys saw with the other stone when I was drilling out the beach rock, I'm gonna do the same thing here. So, I don't know where I put it. It's right here, right in front of me. It's got a little stud on the back. I'm gonna drill that hole for the stud first, and then I'm gonna take a larger burr to burr out the diameter of the washer so that the washer sets down into the stone slightly, hiding some of the outside curve, and it will sit proud of the stone itself. So, like you saw, I'm gonna start just doing progressive drilling to make the hole the right size, and then I'll start widening it out top in order to fit here. So, I'm gonna go this backside where it's a little bit more flat. I'm gonna start drilling my pilot hole kind of where I want it, right in the center of that stone. Make sure I keep the dust down, keep on dipping it in water. Create my pilot hole first. Now that I have that started, I'm gonna go progressively a little larger. Okay, now I've got it to the right diameter for the tube. Now I want to kind of inset a diameter the same size as the washer part of that setting. So I'm going to use a larger burr for that. Have it sitting out here, this guy. So I'm going to measure the outside diameter of that tube, and it's about 7.4. And this burr is 8.21. That means I need to go probably about that deep with it. 7.68, maybe a little bit less. So I'll need to insert that down in, and I'm just gonna basically waller that out with this larger burr until I'm gonna keep on going. I'm gonna test fit, burr, test fit, burr, test fit, and see if it goes. But it's nice and slow. I just want to keep going until I like it, and then I stop, and then I can apply epoxy. Getting close. Not quite. Okay, so it's set in there like I want it to. And all I need to do now is apply some epoxy. But before I do that, I'm going to add another hole right here where I can epoxy in a bail. Using 14 gauge wire instead of 16 because the hole was a little bit too large. I wanted it to be nice and tight in there. I'll show you how I prepare this end for epoxy in a few minutes. But first, let's make a bail with the bail making pliers. Super simple bail. Pick the diameter I want. Rotate this around to create a bail shape. Now that I have this here, I'm going to take my pliers, put that bail back on, grab it, bend it straight, and then I can move this back and forth to be nice and tight for soldering. Just like you'd close a jump ring. Let's make an eyelet, move it back and forth until that gets nice and tight for a solder joint. Looks solder. Put them right below the joint. Soldered. So we've got our bail and we've got our drilled turquoise. If we insert that bail in, we see our tails are really long. This looks really stupid. And if we pull this out, we see that we have about that much left. So what I'm going to do is cut this back and just do a test fit to there. See what we look like. Still too long for me. Test fit. That's looking a little bit better. I'm going to take just a tiny bit off. Actually, no, I'm not. I like the way that looks here on that front side. Now to prepare this for epoxy, I'm going to take my saw and I'm going to make some saw marks on this stud part. What this is going to do is create more surface area for the glue up. I'm just roughing up the surface. I don't want to cut through. I just want to make areas where it's going to bite into the epoxy a little bit more. We have roughed up areas. Okay, next I'm going to apply a small amount of epoxy onto the inside of my piece here, and I'm going to move it around with the toothpick. I don't want a lot because I don't want it to squeeze out. That should be enough. Now I insert this guy where I want him. Just like that. Now we let them dry. Once they dry, we can do a little bit of extra cleanup. And we'll get a close-up picture of what it looks like all epoxied up. So if you have any extra squeeze out of epoxy, you can use acetone to clean that up. And for now, we're just going to let this set up, leave it be, and show you what happens when we get back. Okay, so our epoxy is dried. We are looking good. The last thing we need to do is give it a little bit of a polish. So turquoise is a relatively soft stone. A polish that's safe for that is Zamm. And since our sapphire is a little harder, we should be perfect for any kind of not damaging anything there. So I got a little Zamm on a brush here, and I'm just gonna go around, do a little finish polishing. We'll clean that off and I'll take some photos.